How can mothers lose custody of their children in Maryland? You really need, if you're a dad and you want custody of your children because you believe your children are being abused by their mom, you need to prepare for it. It's very interesting, and it's a phenomena that's just coming to light. But in 2019 at George Washington University, they conducted a study looking at the differences between physical abuse by moms and physical abuse by dads against their children. And what they found is that there is significantly, probably 30% more abuse cases by mothers against their children, as well as 30% more fatalities of children related to abuse caused by the mother as caused by the father. There's also a lot of emotional abuse that mothers are more likely to do against their children than are fathers. The problem is getting this into the courtroom. It's hard, it's elusive, especially when you're talking physical abuse isn't, but emotional abuse is, like gaslighting, undermining the children, being overly critical. And if you are observing that by your wife against your children, you need to prepare in order to be able to prove it. In other words, you need to watch it, you need to document it. Keeping a journal or something along those lines is probably the absolute best way to do that. You write down the date, you make the entry, you explain what happened, and you explain your concern for the child. And not only that, you take remedial action. You talk to your child. You try to neutralize the harm that's coming from the abuse. The written journal is extremely persuasive because it's not something that you can make up. And so it's persuasive for that reason. It appears to be true, but it helps you better able to articulate something that's very hard to articulate. So if you're a dad and you're concerned for your children because they're being abused by their mom, collect evidence, document it. There are other places that you can get evidence, but you need to create it. For instance, you might send a text message to your spouse after one of those incidents of abuse. Hey, I don't think you really should have hit Johnny in front of all of his friends. It's not good for him. I'm concerned. Hopefully you get a response. But what that does is it captures and it a moment in time and creates persuasive trial evidence. If your wife is abusing the children, collect evidence, preserve it, give it to your attorney. Prepare before you leave the home. There's also other things that parents do that are abusive that can be captured, like for instance, withholding food or making a child work, and unless the child works, he doesn't get food. Things like that. It may not seem like much at the time, but if it's part of a pattern of behavior, a series of different types of behavior, capturing those things and putting it in perspective with the other types of abuse gives it real life and paints a picture of the person who's abusing the child. There could be a different type of abuse. Like what I'm talking about thus far is something that's very proactive, but you can have neglect also, where a parent withholds affection, tells the child to go away, doesn't really have the time of day for a child. That type of treatment, neglect, hurts a child. It destroys the child's confidence and character. There's also probably a very damaging, one of the more damaging types of abuse is parental alienation. It's not a syndrome, although you hear that parental alienation syndrome. It's actually behavior where one of the parents, what they do is they undermine the other parent to the child. They demonize the other parent. So if your spouse is alienating you, your spouse would be telling your children, It's your dad's fault that the family isn't together. Your dad is not a good man. Your dad does this. Your dad isn't here, is he? Your dad doesn't want to see you. When all of these things actually are not true. The alienator tries to get the little child to take their side in this very complicated adult affair. It distorts a child and hurts a child. If that's going on in the relationship of your child with the other parent, again, document it, try to intervene. I would say you should even contact and work with a child psychologist to help you know how to navigate through that. It's parental alienation disrupts the emotional development of your child and really requires a very sophisticated response to neutralize it and hopefully stop it. There's a syndrome that is now getting some recognition, but again is not recognized as a mental health problem. It is a series of behavior, and you could look at this one up on the internet, but they call it malicious mother syndrome. And it's actually a combination of all of the types of abuse that I just spoke about, where you would have the slapping the kid in front of his friends or undermining them, criticizing them, at the same time neglecting them, and then trying to alienate the child against the other parent. If you're dealing with your spouse taking out negative behaviors against your child and you're concerned for your child's well-being, call me. I will help you extract yourself and your child from that situation.